This is the future of Africa. In this program, we focus on Horn of Africa's political, economic, and socio-cultural aspects. Let's share our vision, hopes, and professional critics. All views are stemmed. Stay with us. Dr. Ebisa, welcome to this program.
Thank you for having me, OROMIA11 and Dr. Hussein Kadir.
Dr. Ebisa Ragasa was a former president of OSA, currently serving as president of Oromo Professional Group. He wrote several articles on Oromo, Ethiopia-related issues, its political dynamics. He also involved in community and community-related activities. Again, welcome, Dr. Ebisa. Before we dive into our discussion, I would like to raise one important question that's about research. As a researcher, I mean, you have been involved in research activities. Would you mind telling us the importance of research, for instance, in politics, in economy, and in terms of culture?
Thank you. That is a fundamental question. As we can see, the globe is changing, and we have to adapt. Oromo Nation especially needs to adapt, move from traditional way of doing business, especially politics, the way we organize ourselves, and we need to move toward data-driven decision-making. And so research plays a fundamental role, not only in terms of understanding our condition in Ethiopia, but also to compete at the global stage. We have to now adapt a research-based method by collecting data, by analyzing these data dispassionately and looking at them and arrive at the right conclusion. And this gives us an opportunity to look at what's going on in our country properly based on data, the demographic and everything. So research is a key for a nation to move forward, to thrive forward. Without research, strong research center, a nation is unable to survive, and that is evident when now the world is divided into a scientific-based world and non-scientific-based world. So research is one of those things that we have to really take seriously, invest our time, energy, and understand research plays a fundamental role. And this brings us to, especially in Oromo politics, when we're looking at things, I think we have to develop a way of, measuring our progress, measuring the gaps that exist. So research is fundamental in understanding a nation and where we need to go, what are the flaws to make a proper decision.
Thank you, Dr. Ebisa. We'll be coming to this point, and a little bit I would like to ask you about OSA, and as a former president of OSA, how do you describe your experience, like practices, challenges, and opportunities? Because OSA is one of the known research institute or organization, if you like. So what was your experience in terms of practice, challenges, and perhaps opportunities?
Thank you. That is a great question. I have been going to OSA for as long as I can remember, and I have learned quite a lot from my younger age to now, where last year I was the president of the association. The association is very strong. It has survived many challenges, and so this association is in 36 years of its existence. So it has served the Oromo people in quite important way by analyzing data, by reviving some Oromo cultures, especially Gada. So during my presidency, there was a lot of things that I have attempted to bring to OSA and broaden OSA's scope of reach. For instance, OSA needs to take a more of dynamic role when it comes to Oromo politics. We, especially now, after 36 years of existence, OSA has accumulated tremendous amount of knowledge base, and there was a lot of journals, articles, histories that are in there. And now the question is, how can this knowledge be used to empower Oromo people. So one of the vision that I had when I was the president was to unleash this knowledge, to strengthen Oromo, to also use some of these researches that have been done in OSA to direct, to analyze Oromo condition. There were, of course, it's an organization strong in research and academic, but it also needs to broaden scope. And one of the challenges we faced there is then there were some fundamental questions that lingered in OSA, and those challenges are being tackled. One aspect being as an academic organization, as a research organization, where do you draw the line in terms of politics, in terms of other issues? Should politics play a role? In my view, was all politics, all knowledge, all questions should be entertained at OSA, and that gives us the platform to look at dispassionately. Whatever thesis that come to OSA should be challenged there, and so some of these hurdles are there, and hopefully the organization would overcome these challenges. I have also attempted to broaden the scope of OSA, using OSA to introduce OSA to our neighbors, the Horn of Africa. We have started Horn of Africa panel at OSA by introducing Oromo to the neighboring countries, by bringing important researchers, known figures to introduce and to let them know what this Oromo Gadai civilization is about. So in terms of diplomacy also, we have brought in important people. And so those were the critical challenges, points that we brought forward, but still there are some improvement that OSA needs to make, and hopefully the following leadership will take up on those issues and make the organization stronger, better, and reflect the diversity of the Oromo nation abroad.
Thank you, Dr. Bisa. I know that quite a number of high-level professionals have been in it, and OSA has been doing an amazing job, but there are critics, as you said. Instead of widening its scope, there is a tendency of narrowing down. And why is that? And perhaps what do you advise for the leadership, taking over from you?
Yeah, here is one thing that I have observed also is not only in OSA, but this also applies to other organizations. We are functioning as a nation now. We are a stronger nation with different experiences. Unless we bring this different experiences by, broadening the diversity, our diversity of Oromia from every region. But when we bring that into together, we have strong mind, different point of views and experiences, and that would serve the Oromo people much stronger. And so this diversity, when we say diversity, it's not just to bring individuals or to fill gap or to make to look good, but it is important to understand that each regions of Oromia possess different aspects of Oromo culture, Oromo understanding, Oromo philosophy, and our experience under this Ethiopian empire have been also a little bit different. So unless we come by being diverse and by opening ourselves up to different ideas, the effect also would have and what we do will become limited. So this is critical, and not only in OSA, because right now we are evolving as a nation. There was a brief interruption in our progress as a nation, during the scramble for Africa that, stopped some of the progress we were making toward a Republican form of governments. But now we are reconstructing some of those things, and diversity plays a key role. Unless we achieve that, every organization will have a challenging time. And this is something that needs to be taken seriously, especially at this time when Oromo nation have produced, scholars, doctors, and everything, and that has to come to champion Oromo cause.
Thank you so much. I think OSA has been doing an amazing job, and I hope it will keep on doing that. And it's important to have strong institutions or organizations or associations like OSA, and it has to be in a good position. So I personally, support this kind of institutions, because we have to make, as an Oromo, we have to make an informed decision, research informed decision. And with that, I would like to get out of that. But one final point on that, research could be a basic research, research conducted for the sake of knowledge, or basic research, or actual research. Now, in terms of applied research, and in terms of applied research, most of the time, research have been conducted but shelved, because we lack to use those researches. And that's also true back home. A number of institutions, including universities, students, scholars, a number of people do research, actually applied research, a research that is supposed to solve the actual problem of the society. And what's your observation in this regard? Are we using the research, research done to solve our economic, political, socio-cultural situations, or are we doing research for the sake of research as a basic knowledge?
Thank you. That is fundamental, especially at this time where Oromo Nation is in an urgent situation, where the nation is at critical crossroad. Research, applied research especially, needs to be used to resolve some of Oromo issues. Some of the principles, for instance, we could look at our history, for instance, or for instance, the Gada principles. It is time now to revive some of these Gada principles, to use them in different institutions, in different challenges, to resolve some of our issues. Gada is not simply a symbolic thing that we look to, but there are critical ingredients in Gada, for instance, some of the challenges that we are currently facing that we use to resolve some of these issues. So there is vast amount of data and researches that are conducted within OSA and other institutions. It is now important for us to come and look at it. In terms of economy, for instance, we have looked at the data. I think the Oromo Nation contributes tremendous amount of GDP in Ethiopia. But we get less. Our contribution is probably greater than 60%, but what the Oromo Nation in return receives is from those benefits is very minimum. And we have to look at that gap and say, okay, how can the Oromo Nation use its economic power to address some of the political issues in the country? And this has to trickle down to the village level, and then to the district level. It has to move forward, and the Oromo public has to be aware how they can use their own economy for their own empowerment, as well as to influence the political dynamics in Ethiopia. So knowing, okay, Oromo have this amount of economy, this is our contribution, that is one aspect, but that then needs to be translated into empowering the Oromo people. So the Oromo resources, for instance, what are our resources? What are our land is capable of producing? What are the rivers? What are the capability? This has to be looked at, and it needs to be used. And then one important thing is, how does the market economy work in Ethiopia? What is the Oromo public's participation? All this is important. Unless we have these data, it's going to be difficult to conduct a political movement or push politically. So applied research, especially now, some of the challenges we are facing, the division within some of the sectors, the problem that exists, and us not coming together at this urgent time, we can look into the Gada principle, we can look into our elders and see how they have resolved some of the issues, if there is an issue. If there is no issue, then why is it this is a challenge? So I think Gada, in my understanding, the way I have in OSA as the president when I was there, one of the key things that I have learned about my people and the heritage is there is vast amount of knowledge in our background that we can use to solve our current problem. We just kind of neglect it, and this needs to be brought to the public at the greater depth.
Thank you. Now let's get out of this and dive into the gist of our discussion. As a researcher who did conduct research on the dynamics of politics in Oromia, Ethiopia, and so on, how do you see the struggle of the Oromo people from your side?
The struggle of Oromo people is challenging. At the same time, also we have to give credit to ourselves and the Oromo people. What had happened in Oromia, or to us especially, is a very interesting circumstances when we look at history. The Oromo nation lives now under an empire, basically. It's an empire. And this empire is actually a subsidized empire. What do we mean by subsidized? The Ethiopian empire or government or regime has always been subsidized from outside to oppressors or nations. And so the Oromo struggle, and predominantly the struggle that we have conducting, is two things: reform of the Ethiopian politics, also transform the Ethiopian empire to a more democratic state, maybe move into a constitutional state. What the Oromo have achieved alone, a lot of the struggles, a lot of the gains that we have achieved, is because of our own strength, without any outside assistance. We're been able to preserve our culture. We've been able to, through many struggles, and many credit goes to a lot of our forefathers, our leaders that had the vision to lay out some of the work that has been done. And we have made tremendous gain, no question about it. For instance, the Kube generation is not something likely that could be looked at. It came through a lot of struggle. The Oromo Liberation Front plays a key role, including the Oromo people who have supported it. So this have changed, pushed the Ethiopian empire, and opened the space for the Oromo public. Now, there is more that needs to be done. And in those terms, it is now up to us now. Look at ourselves. We can look at the government. We can look at some of the problems in Ethiopia, the regime, the military, the human rights oppression, all of these things. But now the question is, we have to reorganize ourselves, look at ourselves, use some of the tools that we have, so use some of the cultures that we have to move forward. So it is challenging time, especially now for Oromo people, because some part of Oromia is under war, under threat. Some part is going through hunger and starvation, and there's drought in certain areas. So we're not able to address some of these issues immediately because of the political consequences, because the central government is hell-bent on oppressing, want to continue, repeat basically the past, and continue to suppress the rights of the people. And this has a ramification, on Ethiopian public, especially on Oromo people, politically, economically. So what is it now that needs to be done in Ethiopia is a question that we, the Oromo leaders, the Oromo elites from outside, inside, needs to come together and look at it and come up with a political solution for ourselves internally. And once we have consensus on that level, then we can move forward in challenges. And some of the things, I mean, it's not simple. The cultural celebrations that we had, the Recha, and some of the cultural freedom that the Oromo have gained had come through the struggle that we have gained. And this is an important symbolic victory for Oromo people, and we will continue to make progress on this. But it is up to the Oromo people now, Oromo leaders, to come and sit down and look at the next chapter of Oromo struggle and what needs to be done in the country.
Great observation. I see that, yes, there has been great achievements over years, and that is undeniable. But some people tend to come up with critiques that we usually tend to miss opportunities, like the opportunities in 1974, 1991, 2018, and so on. We have been missing these opportunities. I'm saying 1974, 1991, and 2018. I personally believe that one of the problem was like the absence of having strong institutional foundations and perhaps institutions that really work towards that. And what's your observation in that regard?
Absolutely. It is, you put your hand on it. Without an institution, without properly functioning institution, we will have a hard time. And we have strong nationalists, brilliant leaders, and the public who's hungry for freedom and progress. And one of the things that we now have to do is build an institution that supports, that matches that level of understanding and passion. And so we have to come back and look at ourselves. How does one build an institution? What does this institution needs to entail? And we have to really now have an honest conversation and look at the past, like you said, what had happened in 2018? Where did we miss? What was our blind spot? Where did we go wrong? What opportunity do we not exploit? What other things did we not look at that made it so we could not capitalize fully on the progress that we have been made? And so for this, we need a proper and honest discussion among ourselves at the academic level, at the community level. So clarity is very important. Clarity and transparency is very important. So an institution that's not built on this in the shadow, or that's not transparent to the Oromo people, will become ineffective in a sense. And this has been the traditional mode of operating the Oromo institutions, saying, okay, this today, tomorrow, this, that. This type of traditional leadership or organizing political institutions or community institutions will not get us far. So it is up to us now to come back and look at. We have many examples. We can look at how other countries, other institutions have organized themselves to overcome some of these challenges. We have plenty. We have a lot of countries that have overcome similar challenges that the Oromos had. And now we have to come back and say, what exactly is it? Where do we begin building the right institution? And in my observation of looking at the Oromo movement, the struggle for a very long time, one key factor that was missing, I believe, is we have not focused on investment. Meaning, when I say investment, is fund resources. It takes tremendous amount of resources to conduct or to build an institution. You cannot conduct the Oromo struggle or run an institution on a voluntary basis. This chapter has to end, and we have to rethink in a way that we have to bring in professionals. They have to be paid, and for that we have to fund. And so we have to move forward and say, now we are here. Okay, this is our vision. This is an institution we're building. And for that, we have to reach out to the Oromo mass and ask and learn how to campaign and collect fund. Without fund, any vision, any strong leadership will have a very difficult time overcoming some of these challenges. As you can see, in my observation, even under Ethiopian empire, Oromo have produced brilliant leaders that were ahead of their time, but they weren't able to capitalize on that because we missed one important factor, and that could have been due to the historical aspect of our experience with the Ethiopian empire that have taken us, separated us from our own economy and monopolized our economy. We didn't have direct access to our economy, but now we have to be smart enough and put how do we fund our own organization. I know there's a lot of initiative that's going on right now, but this needs to be done at the grander scale. If we have the funds, in my view, if we have the funds, if we learn how to come together, use our demographics, use our numbers, and bring these funds, there's a lot of smart people in the world. Even if we cannot come up with some solution, we can hire people, we can bring strong people. So from going forward, these institutions, one, they have to find a way to be funded. And we have fragmented an institution. Everybody starts something here, something there, and we are drowning in different organizations coming together. Being founded or started, but not going anywhere. But it's time for us to come and consolidate. Similar organizations used to come together and consolidate their energy, their idea, and other organizations need to do the same so we can focus on and target our energy. But in my view, without transparency, without professionalism, without really reaching out to Oromo public and learn how to campaign and fund our organization, our struggle, we will have a difficult time. So investment from Oromo public is needed. Leadership needs to go out and recruit funds and bring it to the table. And there we can hire our own young professionals who are otherwise working on different aspects of work. They can come and work on their own struggle. So even the existing institutions are not, they need to take a look at this aspect. We've been so busy focused on our struggle, on the daily oppression that the Ethiopian Empire have imposed on us. We have not had time to reorganize ourselves, but it is time that we start a new chapter by moving in a different direction, I believe.
Perhaps we'll be back to this point shortly. Now, let's move towards the current situation of Ethiopia in general terms. As experienced person and as a person who closely following the situation in Ethiopia, how do you evaluate the political, economic, and diplomatic situation of Ethiopia? I mean, the current political, economic, and diplomatic situation of Ethiopia. I've been asking this question all through, but I would like to see your reflections.
Well, the current situation in Ethiopia, and this from Oromo sector, we've been observing this coming from for a very long time. Ethiopia is on the verge of disintegration. Unless a major course, a major shift is taking place, no one could stop the direction the empire is going. The empire is refusing to transform for her own sake and become a democratic state. And the public on the ground are now self-aware. The nationalities of Ethiopia are asking for their right, for their own representation, for their right to be respected. So you have, at the higher level, you have a government that seeks to want to oppress that. You have the mass wanting liberty within its own and to be respected. So you have this clash of ideas. And this empire, the way this empire is built is by oppression, suppression, denying. And so what you are seeing right now, the war, the chaotic in the country, is the clash of these ideas coming together at this critical time. And what you see is an implosion of this. And you are seeing now in every aspect, the country is involved in war. Every region, there is uncertainty in every region. The war in the north, the Cold War in Oromia that's going on in other regions. This is precisely have been predicted by the Oromo intellectuals and called. In fact, the Gero movement was this through the peaceful struggle. There was a hope that the Ethiopian Empire will learn from its mistakes and adapt a constitutional or respect and democracy and hold proper election and move toward a different chapter. This has not happened. So what you hear here is a natural decline of the empire. Now, could it be saved is the question. Is there a different outcome to this? It all depends. It all depends. But business as usual is no longer works in Ethiopia, where one ethnic group dominates every sector of the country, and from politics to economics to the media, that day is gone. So what needs to happen is we need to have a genuine understanding. One, what is the problem in the country? And I hope that since the Prime Minister had come to power, he has realized war is not an answer. That will not solve a problem. And those that seeks to return to the past, that is also have devastating consequences. And so for their own sake, for their own sake now, what we need is a genuine discussion and decide what I mean, it's up to the people how this empire is going to transform. Either go through a violent death or go through a transformation. This is the option that's on the ground. And I don't think a simple political maneuver or war would resolve this fundamental issue in the ground. So as you said, in the country, I have not seen this level of war, violence, and for a very long time, the economic devastation in a very short time, and the lack of institution, even the government. It's very risky to say that there's a serious functioning government in Ethiopia because you do not know who's doing what, who's operating what. And so we are in a serious situation. The government or whoever is running the government have to seriously take a look at the data that's coming, diversify every aspect of the institution if Ethiopia has to have a chance to either transform into a democratic state or continue on this path. As you can see, just within a short time, the economy has gone down, the level of instability in the country has gone. We have lost, Ethiopia has lost credibility at the diplomatic level. The little historical credit that Ethiopia had is now gone at the international level. So even that external legitimacy that many Ethiopian regimes had has been lost at the international level now. So you have this implosion in the country. You have the international community not precisely knowing what to do, but putting a bandage on what's going on in the country. So the war in the north needs to be seriously looked at, and what effect it would have on Oromo people, what effect it would have on the region. And as an Oromo man, I'm concerned what the outcome of this war is. I'm concerned about the war in the escalation of war in different part of Oromia. And this is serious. This, in fact, will exacerbate the situation in the country unless it stops.
I think that is very vivid, and there is a grand understanding or agreement on what's happening in terms of crisis in Ethiopia, particularly due to the ongoing war, inflation, drought, in some cases famine, and so on. These are really critical challenges for that nation, and I don't know, the country seems moving towards unfolding stage or unfolding curve unless something is done. Now the question is, there are some efforts in terms of national dialogue and everything. So how do you describe that?
National dialogue. I think this national dialogue has been in process for a very long time. If it happens, all good. Now, my concern is here. If it occurs, we have to be ready as Oromo people to take advantage of it, to put our own agenda in there. If it doesn't happen, then we have to look at the alternatives. We have to look at many of these alternatives. Now, if it happens, that may bring an end to the war, but the crisis, the political question still remains. So at least if this national dialogue goes and becomes, and by the way, has to be inclusive. No one should be left out of this national dialogue, because if it does, you may temporarily solve some problem, but gain a bigger problem down the road. So my interest, especially as an Oromo, when I'm looking at this, is whether the national dialogue occurs or not, is our preparation. How do we prepare for inevitability of what is going on? And for this, we really have to seriously come together at this critical time, focus our energy at the diplomatic level for inclusion of Oromo agenda. We have to reach out to other neighboring countries and say, if you leave out this large portion of Ethiopian population or the Oromo people, there is no serious national dialogue that could take place. And for that, we have to push forward. We have to come together and bring our own issue. We must have, even prior to that, we must have an internal national dialogue within ourselves, bring that together, have a common understanding, have a common interest. And once we consolidate that, from even including the political parties that are in Ethiopia and other influential institutions in the diaspora, needs to have some serious consideration and look at what does Oromo want from this national dialogue, how is it going to proceed, who should participate. Some of this critical question at least should be laid out for us to take advantage of. And so the national dialogue, in fact, Oromo, for a very long time, at least this national dialogue was first initiated by Oromo leaders. They said, there's no way you could have a nation that's as diverse as Ethiopia, as different as Ethiopia, and not have a national dialogue as to which direction the country goes. And by delaying that, if we had had that conversation 4 years down the road, some of this devastation that we previously discussed in the current crisis that Ethiopia is in would have been avoided. So for me, before even the government national dialogue, I wish Oromo people would come and have a serious internal national dialogue, and then we can be worried about what the government's doing.
Thanks so much for that reflection. I also suggest and support what you have been saying. Particularly, there should be some kind of dialogue among the Oromos so that the Oromos can stand and work with the other nations and nationalities. So it's very important. The other thing is with regard to the national dialogue and organizations and the international community, scholars have been requesting for that, but it seems the tendency is not genuine. But as far as the national dialogue is happened to be inclusive, all-inclusive, participatory, and perhaps coordinated by an independent body, I think that is the best option that nation is going to use, because war cannot serve as a political solution, and the solution should be political. So you can't solve political problems through war. You solve political problems politically. So I think in this century, what we need to advocate, promote is that. But the question is, the government should be ready for that. Are they ready? That's a question. Do they want to include all, like a tendency of discussing with some group and ignoring the other group? Doesn't work. So that's my own reflection. And let me slightly pull you out and then take to the corruption-related issues, which is a critical problem in that nation. Corruption seems a means of living in that country in general, particularly in Oromia, and the corruption is mainly related to land grabbing. How do you see this?
Well, the objective of the Ethiopian Empire was started on the basis of corruption, taking it other people's land through through corrupt way, by taking land, war, extortion, and nothing has changed. It started with the Menelik, and Haile Selassie have done the same, and Mengistu temporarily had gone into a communist mode of governance, a socialist type, and that lasted briefly for maybe 5-6 years after landed with Taylor. After that, it continued because the way the country operates, and this is key that I believe what we need to understand is, in Ethiopia, things change. The government could change. The regime could change. What doesn't change is the bureaucracy. There is an appearance of change on the government changing, but what remains intact is the civil services and some other bureaucratic institutions that also entrench and remain there. So what happens is this bureaucracy supports this kind of corruption, for instance, in order to stay in power, in order to stay, is for their own interest. Unless we're able to tackle that, entrench, especially the domination of one ethnic group over, a the bureaucracy, this corruption is a symptom. When you come to Oromia, then what the government does is there is no, especially in the last 4 years, the economy has gone down. There is no export. Our export has gone down, so it's only importation. The war has tremendous cost. So what is there left for the government to even employ its own security forces, its own militaries? It has to rely on the land. It has to rely on corruption. It has to in order to stay in power. So we are looking at basically a decaying government action right now. It's blatant. When you look at, like you said, it's obvious now. You cannot, before you can hide corruption, it's not in the public face. It was done behind closed door in the previous times. Maybe it was a little bit more apparent during the TPLF. But if you look at the government that was there prior to that, was done behind door. Now it's obvious. It's open to the public. And this is indication that the economy in the country is going down, and the corruption, in fact, it's the corruption, unless the corruption gets serious attention, it will actually exacerbate the instability and the political instability, the instability of the country. So there is serious corruption. Now, what do Oromo people need to do? You just reorganize yourself, understand how the system works, and fight back from the village level. But there is, and I agree with you, I wish there is a way to combat this. If there was a legitimate government, we could hold some accountability and bring some checks and balances to this. But you have a government that I have heard from our officials, this is the way of the business. This is how it's done. So the moral degradation of the country is at its lowest point right now. And we have to be cognizant of that and understand that, especially the Oromo public, coming from the background that we come from, where we're not aware of a lot of corruptions at the social and local level, but they need to be cognizant of it and not to be taken advantage of.
Thank you. Yeah, the absence of accountability in that nation is one of the critical problems of the system itself. That's why corruption is everywhere. It turns to be a system or a trend in that nation. It's a normal thing in that country now. Now, I promise to retouch upon issues that are related to the Oromo people, and personally, I advocate three central pillars for the Oromo people, and I would like to see whether you agree or disagree with that. The first thing is having unity, and the Oromo people, this juncture, we always need unity, but at this juncture, we need unity. The second one is we need to have strong institutional foundations. And the third one is, in fact, I'm always biased towards that element, that's education. We need to educate our people, educate our people. That's why we tend to focus on research today. So my suggestion is unity, strong organizational foundations, education and research. Do you agree, or do you want to add more? How do you see this?
Right. Thank you. The unity, we've been saying unity for a very long time. And my opinion is the Oromo public has always been united. What had happened is how do you utilize this unity? You need a strong leadership, you need a strong vision, you need a strategy to bring this unity together. And most of all, really, unity comes through transparency. We have to trust one another. The institution has to be transparent. And this is the issue that we have raised about diversity. We're almost diverse. It doesn't mean we're different. We're just diverse. We have different experiences. The fact that I'm here in America, I have different experiences than my brother who's back home. We have diverse views. And so what I am saying is the Oromo public is united in the vision of overcoming some of the challenges, the struggles, and they're hungry for a leadership that would take them to the promised land, per se, for ultimate freedom. That's there. The lack is, like you said, the institution and the leadership capability. in a lot of the issue that I'm observing is right now is self-inflicted wound on Oromo. We are causing the problem. We, the leadership or the elites, whatever you want to call it, we are causing it, and in fact, creating division, knowingly or unknowingly. I don't know, but unity is a purpose. We see when a strong leader on an idea comes, Oromo people are united on an idea of freedom, on an idea of justice, on an idea of dignity. There is no question about this. Now, what we need to do is really have a strong conversation amongst ourselves. How do we handle different opinions? How do we handle different views? And the priority, what is our priority right now? What is urgent right now? And if we agree on those priorities and not raise issues that actually exacerbate or bring problem into our own homes. For instance, the question many of the time that I'm hearing, whether you're for self-determination or against, or you're a federalist or you want Ethiopia reform, I think these are a secondary question. The question is now we need to come as a unified force and handle the enemy or the direct attack that has been conducting on Oromo people. Once we resolve that, once we're able to resolve that, some of these questions become a political question. Whether you would like to be part of the Ethiopia or not, then once we have achieved this priority, once we are free, once the institution is reflect us, represent us, once the security forces want, and the direct attack that's going on Oromia, once we have gotten rid of that, then it's an exercise of democracy. The question among Oromos, whether you want independence or not, or different form of governance, that's a question of democracy. But for us to exercise democracy, we have to focus on the critical problem today. The second thing that you have said is we need a strong media, and you can see the shift that the media had played in Oromo history. The fact that Facebook, YouTube, OMN, and other medias like Oromo Media, OROMIA11, and other, this has done is it brought our voices from different areas. We no longer have to rely on enemies to interpret for us. We can now directly communicate across nation and have a common issue, understand on common issue. So revamping the media, strengthening the media as a priority so we can have a unified voice is the key to achieving this unity. I know there's a lot that could be said in the institution. We definitely now is time to genuinely ask ourselves, is what we've been doing, is this the right way? Could it be done better? And could it be improved upon? What was the shortcoming? We have to do a system analysis. Like you said, 91, what had happened? What was the failure? 2018, what was the failure? 1974. During this critical point, we don't have the serious data. We have to look at that. And for that, we need an institution. And our institution have to be ready to adapt and change. You said education. I think I'm less hopeful that the Ethiopian education system would fully empower the Oromo people or the other nations. So
and that could be an agenda by itself. We'll discuss right. the other time, and I'm glad that you have agreed with that. And the point you raised is like unity is essential and it's important. And unity does not mean uniformity or wearing the same jacket, but it's like having common vision, common goal, and so on, and working together. And at the end of the day, it is for the sake and interest of the Oromo people. So the issue of diversity is there, even within the Oromos, and that beauty should be appreciated, as you have said. Now, we don't have time, and we could have discussed a lot. But I'd like to give you a final chance to make your remark in terms of advising the Ethiopian government, the Ethiopian people, the international community, in fact, within a split of second, because we are running out of time.
Thank you. Final remark. I don't know if the Ethiopian government hears me. Then here is my suggestion. The power of the people will always win. The demand of it may take little time. It may take little time for the public to coalesce, but what is important here is there is a change, a fundamental psychological, philosophical change among the population, especially the younger generation wants freedom, wants to exercise their right, wants to live in a free and prosperous country. And the oppression of this would be very detrimental to the government down the road. The government needs to allow the demand of the people and open some of the institutions, open some of the medias, and stop human rights violation. Because I think there's confusion. The regime wants to stay in power by any means, and the public now have reached a point where they cannot compromise on their right. So this collision force is coming. So the Ethiopian government needs to really look at Oromo history, look at the Gada system, look how that have served the Oromo people for a very long time through peace, through it brought peace to the larger people. So they don't have to go far in terms of understanding the principle of governance. They can look at our heritage. They can look at some of the lived experiences of our people and apply some of those to the current governance. Maybe at the local level they can start doing that. Maybe at the regional level they can start implementing some of those things. But the country is on the verge of implosion. We hope that the government takes time and have a discussion with concerned people, reach out to intellectuals, reach out to academicians, look at every aspect of the country, and reinstitute, continue upon the promises of reform that they have made in 2018. Now, just one last comment, if I could say. I know the issue of unity among Oromos have been overplayed, but remember, the first thing that the enemy attacks is our unity. Look at the historically. That's the first thing they attack. And since 2018, a new form of attack on our unity is upon us. We have to understand how the propaganda in the country works, and we can discuss this further down the road. Thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Hussein.
Thanks so much, Dr. Ebisa. With this, we conclude our discussion today with Dr. Ebisa. For those of you who would like to share your vision, professional critics, and hopes, the door is open, and you can contact me through my Facebook. My name is Hussein Kader. Again, Dr. Ebisa, profoundly thank you for your reflections. This is the future of Africa. In this program, we focus on Horn of Africa's political, economic, and socio-cultural aspects. Let's share our vision, hopes, and professional critics. All views are esteemed. Stay with us.